stop scrolling for a second. Because what I'm about to say might be the one thing you didn't want to hear, but needed to hear the most. You're not stuck because life is unfair. You're not behind because others are lucky. And you're definitely not failing because you're not capable. You're stuck because of what you've been quietly ignoring. The small things. The uncomfortable truths. The habits you keep postponing. The standards you keep lowering. The discipline you keep delaying. And the dangerous part is, it doesn't feel dangerous. It feels normal. It feels like, I'll start tomorrow. It feels like, just one more time. It feels like, it's not a big deal. But those small moments, they are shaping your entire life. Right now, there is a version of you that you think about. A version that is more focused, more confident, more in control. But that version isn't far away. It's being blocked by the things you keep neglecting every single day. And here's the truth no one tells you. You don't lose your potential in one big failure. You lose it in small daily decisions that seem harmless in the moment. Decisions that slowly disconnect you from who you could become. So if you feel like something is off, if you feel like you should be further ahead, if you feel that quiet frustration you can't explain, this is why. And in the next few minutes, you're going to see something clearly. Maybe for the first time. Not surface level advice. Not motivation that fades tomorrow, but the real patterns that are either building your life or quietly destroying it. So don't look away now, because what you're about to realize might change how you see yourself forever. Neglect is dangerous not because it is loud, but because it is silent. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't force your attention. It doesn't feel urgent. And that's exactly why it's so powerful. Most people are not failing because they made one catastrophic mistake. They're not losing because of one bad decision. They're drifting slowly, almost invisibly, through a series of small moments where they chose what was easy over what was necessary. And those moments feel harmless when they happen. That's the deception. You skip one opportunity to improve yourself, and you tell yourself it doesn't matter. You delay one important decision, and you justify it by saying you'll handle it later. You ignore one uncomfortable truth about your habits, your relationships, or your mindset, and you convince yourself it's not that serious. But what you're really doing is creating a pattern. And patterns, when repeated long enough, become your identity. Psychologically, the human mind is wired to prioritize immediate comfort over long-term growth. It seeks relief, not resistance. It wants ease, not effort. So when you choose to avoid something difficult, your brain rewards you in the moment. You feel temporary peace. You feel a sense of escape. But that relief comes at a cost, because every time you avoid what matters, you reinforce a version of yourself that is comfortable with neglect. And here's where it becomes dangerous. Neglect compounds. It's not just one missed action. It's the accumulation of missed actions. It's not just one wasted hour. It's the habit of wasting time. It's not just one moment of silence when you should have spoken. It's the pattern of shrinking yourself. Over time, these small choices don't just affect your results. They reshape your standards. You begin to normalize what you once knew was below you. Philosophically, this is where people lose their sense of direction. Not because they don't have goals, but because their daily actions are disconnected from those goals. There is a gap between intention and behavior, and the longer that gap exists, the more internal conflict you feel. That quiet frustration, that sense of being stuck, that feeling that you're capable of more, but not living it, that's not random. That's the consequence of accumulated neglect. And what makes this even more complex is that neglect often disguises itself as patience or rest. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right time. You say you're just taking a break. And sometimes that's true. But more often than people want to admit, it's avoidance dressed up as strategy. It's fear disguised as logic. Because taking action requires discomfort. It requires confronting the possibility of failure, rejection, or uncertainty, and neglect allows you to postpone that discomfort. It gives you an illusion of control while quietly taking real control away from you. The problem is, life doesn't respond to your intentions. It responds to your actions. You can think about change all day. You can plan, analyze, and prepare endlessly. But if your actions don't align with what you say you want, your life will always reflect what you do, not what you think. And this is where awareness becomes critical. You have to start noticing the moments where you choose to neglect something that matters. Not the big, obvious moments, but the small, subtle ones. The decision to scroll instead of focus. The choice to stay silent instead of speak. The habit of delaying instead of doing. These are the moments that define you. Because the truth is, neglect is never neutral. It is always moving you in a direction, either toward the life you want or away from it. But here's the shift that changes everything. If neglect is built through small, repeated inaction, then it can be reversed the same way, through small, intentional action. You don't need to overhaul your entire life in one day. You need to interrupt the pattern. You need to catch yourself in those moments and make a different choice, even if it's a small one. That's how you rebuild control. That's how you rebuild discipline. That's how you close the gap between who you are and who you know you can become. So the question is not whether neglect exists in your life. It does. The real question is whether you are willing to confront it. Because at the end of the day, your life is not shaped by what you dream about. It is shaped by what you repeatedly ignore. And the moment you stop ignoring what matters is the moment your life starts to change. Your standards are quietly shaping your life, whether you realize it or not. Not your goals, not your intentions, not even your ambitions, but your standards. Because goals are something you talk about. Standards are something you live by. And there is a difference. You can have the highest goals in the world and still live a life far beneath them. Why? Because goals are future-based. They exist in your mind. Standards, on the other hand, exist in your present behavior. They are the line you refuse to cross. They are the behaviors you refuse to tolerate, from yourself and from others. Psychologically, standards act as a filter. They determine what you accept, what you reject, and what you normalize. If your standards are low, you will unconsciously allow things into your life that contradict your goals. You will accept less effort, less respect, less discipline, and over time, that becomes your reality. And here's where most people get it wrong. They believe that what they desire is what defines them. But in reality, what they tolerate defines them far more. Think about it. If you say you value respect, but you consistently allow people to speak to you in ways that diminish you, then your standard is not respect, it is tolerance of disrespect. If you say you want success, but you repeatedly accept procrastination, distraction, and inconsistency in your daily life, then your standard is not excellence, it is mediocrity. And life always aligns with your standards, not your words. Philosophically, this creates a kind of internal contradiction. You begin to live in a way that is misaligned with your own values. You say one thing, but you accept another, and that gap creates tension. It creates frustration. It creates that quiet sense that something is off, even if you can't fully explain it. Because at a deeper level, you know. You know when you're allowing behavior that doesn't match who you want to be. You know when you're settling. You know when you're negotiating with your own potential. And every time you do that, you send a message to yourself, this is acceptable. That message is powerful. Because your mind is always learning from your actions. It doesn't listen to what you say. It observes what you do. So when you repeatedly accept less, your mind adjusts your identity to match it. You begin to see yourself as someone who tolerates, someone who waits, someone who compromises on things that matter. And once that identity is formed, your behavior starts to follow it automatically. This is why raising your standards is not just about changing your external life. It's about redefining your internal identity. It's about deciding, with clarity what you will and will not accept anymore. Not in a dramatic, emotional moment, but in a consistent, disciplined way. It shows up in small decisions. The decision to follow through on something you said you would do. The decision to walk away from situations